What makes Ireland so special? Is it the gloriously green hillsides? The stone-worked storied castles? Is it that beguiling Irish wit? A writer once said, Ireland is a land of happy wars and sad love songs. This is a country that struggled with mountains of adversity, but still seems to maintain a poetic, almost lyrical outlook on life. Ireland is a place where storytellers are kings, where words, written, spoken, or sung, have a charm like nowhere in the world. Tales are told with a twinkle in the eye, and perhaps a twist at the end. Dublin is Ireland's urban oasis. It's a great cultural crossroads that's inspired an extraordinary literary and intellectual legacy. In a country known for its laid-back pace, Dublin is fast and modern. But rest assured, traditional Ireland still thrives in the grand historic buildings, the welcoming pubs, and the ready Irish smiles. We'll begin here in Ireland's largest city. After exploring a mystical monastery south of Dublin, we'll head to fascinating Mhide Castle, and then on to Tera, home of the Irish High Kings. Finally, we'll go north for a peek into the past at Ulster's terrific folk park. From Celtic treasures to ferocious Vikings to years of English domination, Dublin is loaded with history. And the very best way to see it all is, you guessed it, on foot. Dublin is tailor-made for a walking tour. Dublin town was actually founded by the invading Vikings, who built a port here near an older Celtic settlement. Instead of merely pillaging and plundering, some of the Viking Danes decided to stay and intermarry with the Irish. Christ Church, located in the oldest part of the city, dates to 1038, when Sitric, the Danish king, built a church here. And for centuries it's been added to and redecorated. After the last of the Irish High Kings died, the Pope in Rome granted England authority over Ireland. This opened the door for Strongbow, an Anglo-Norman noble who invaded Ireland in the 12th century. Strongbow pledged his loyalty and all of Ireland to the service of the English king. The church's south aisle holds a monument to Strongbow. And according to legend, this half-figure beside the tomb is Strongbow's son. Supposedly, the mighty warrior cut his son in half when Junior showed cowardice in battle. I guess that was an early version of tough love. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the atmospheric crypt rang with the noise of buying and selling, when beer and tobacco vendors served customers here. Today, it houses monuments to former political and religious bigwigs, and a collection of golden treasures, including this plate bestowed on the cathedral by King William of Orange. Towering in the heart of the Old City, Dublin Castle was the center of British power in Ireland for more than 7 centuries. From this bastion, the British viceroys kept a close watch on their valuable Irish colony. But England's brutal and repressive practices stoked resentment in the locals, who wanted to control their own destiny. As a burgeoning Irish independence movement gained steam, the castle developed networks of intelligence and monitored the activities of suspected rebels, but to no avail. In 1922, the British were forced to surrender this stronghold to the newly formed Irish government. Broad and busy, OConnell Street is the commercial center of Dublin. It's named for Daniel O'Connell, the great nationalist leader who secured voting rights for Catholics in the mid-19th century. Tall columns line Dublin's General Post Office, the great symbol of Irish freedom. On Easter Monday, 1916, a bloody battle began when Irish rebel leaders read the Proclamation of Irish Independence from the post office steps. Using mail bags as barricades, the rebels held off the British for nearly a week.
If you look very carefully, you can still see the bullet holes in the columns.
The British response was swift and harsh. The rebels were brought here to Kilmainham Jail, an ominous building west of the city center. The Brits had been imprisoning, torturing, and killing political prisoners here for decades. Of the 15 rebels executed for the Easter Rising, as it's called in Ireland, 14 were executed here, including James Connolly, who, unable to stand because of his wounds, was shot while tied to a chair.
The British strategy backfired. The Irish were so outraged by the executions that sympathy for the rebel movement quickly grew. The uprising galvanized the country and helped to bring about a free Ireland.
Ireland's first president, Eamon de Valera, was Kilmainham's last prisoner.
Okay, we've got lots more history coming up, but first, I'm ready for a little liquid refreshment, a bit of Dublin's black brew. Every trip to Ireland should include at least one visit to a pub, preferably many visits to pubs.
This is where you'll find the soul of Dublin, in one of the city's more than 700 pubs. James Joyce wrote, "Good puzzle would be, cross Dublin without passing a pub." Here's where you go to have a friendly local bend your ear, and where you'll hear some toe-tapping Irish music. We're in O'Donoghue's Pub, a Dublin institution, and a favorite after-work hangout for local office workers. O'Donoghue's gained fame as the place where the Irish folk group, the Dubliners, got its start. Musicians still gather here nightly for impromptu sessions of traditional fun.
So what's the answer to the puzzle? Well, to cross Dublin without passing a pub, you just go into every one.
Just up the street, Trinity College may be Dublin's most famous site. As you probably recall, when England broke with the Church of Rome, Ireland stayed primarily Catholic. Queen Elizabeth I founded Trinity College in 1592 as a Protestant seminary to, as she put it, civilize the Irish and cure them of popery. Originally, only Protestants were allowed to attend, but in the late 18th century it was open to Catholics. Even then, not many enrolled, because up until the 1960s, the Catholic Church considered it a sin to attend Trinity. Today, the majority of the students are Catholic. Some of the college's more famous attendees include writers Jonathan Swift, Oscar Wilde, and Samuel Beckett. The most compelling part of the college for visitors is the Old Library. It contains Ireland's greatest collection of manuscripts and ancient texts. The highlight, of course, is the Book of Kells, the country's prized tourist attraction. This beautiful manuscript of the four Gospels dates to about 800 AD.
During the Middle Ages, Irish monasteries were tucked safely away from the barbarians rampaging across Europe's mainland. The monks used their time diligently to document oral traditions and transcribe the great classical works of Western civilization. The Book of Kells was their most spectacular achievement.
This meticulous rendering of Celtic knotwork, interwoven with animals and Latin characters, glows with brightly colored ink that came courtesy of ground-up insects. To help with preservation, only 2 of the 4 books are on display at any one time, and librarians turn 1 page a month. You'd never suspect that St. Stephen's Green was once the site of public hangings. Today, it's the favorite lunch lounge for Dublin's many office workers, kind of an Irish Central Park. In the summer, it's fun to grab a picnic at a nearby shop and join the crowds settling in on the lawns. In the old days, this was a private estate, but in 1877, Sir Arthur Guinness pushed an act through Parliament to open it to the public. Dubliners love their monuments, but with their droll sense of humor, they can't resist making up irreverent nicknames for them. Molly Malone, seen here pushing her wheelbarrow, has been dubbed the Tart with the Cart. On the north side of Halfpenny Bridge, take a gander at the indelicately termed Hags with the Bags. And when construction on the new Dublin spire was delayed and the monument lacked a top, some locals simply called it pointless.
A talent for words, 'tis the Irish claim to fame. This small island has produced a disproportionately large number of great writers, and the Dublin Writers' Museum celebrates this wonderful verbal heritage.
It's a fascinating collection of personal manuscripts and mementos belonging to Jonathan Swift, William Butler Yeats, Oscar Wilde, and George Bernard Shaw, just to name a few. James Joyce, of course, immortalized Dublin in his great masterpiece Ulysses. The once scandalous novel, modeled on Homer's epic, follows main character Leopold Bloom as he makes his way to various sites in Dublin over the period of one day. If you're planning to take in the James Joyce Museum or the George Bernard Shaw House after leaving here, you'll save a few euros by purchasing a combined ticket instead of paying for separate admissions. If you prefer your literary history with a pint, head to the literary pub crawl that starts most evenings at the Duke.
We're going to break into a church.
Actors take on the characters of Ireland's literati and escort you on a tour of their favorite hangouts.
Wait till I tell yous. I was working in the convent one time when the donkey dropped dead outside the laundry.
The concept of the Jameson Dublin Literary Pub Crawl is to have culture stops with no drink and drinking stops with no culture. Basically what we do is we walk around town, we tell stories about different writers that have connections with various pubs, perform pieces from their writings, then visit the pubs, then head on for more art and culture and drink. One of Dublin's most famous writers is Samuel Beckett, and we actually do a full-length play of Samuel Beckett's on the Dublin Literary Pub Crawl. I'll do it for you now, in fact. It's one of his more interesting pieces called Breath. Thank you very much. That, believe it or not, is the play in its entirety. But that is not the original. That is the translation from the French.
The walk is lots of fun, even if the emphasis is just as much on great drinking as great writing. Ever wonder where all that beer comes from? Well, we did. So we headed for the Guinness Brewery tour. More than half of the beer consumed in Ireland is brewed here. Guinness is responsible for the distinctive dark stout, famous for its thick, creamy head that's popular the world round. Arthur Guinness had big plans. He founded the original brewery in 1759 and signed a 9,000-year lease.
Here at St. James's Gate, we use 8 million litres of water every day, and it's the nice soft water that helps to give Guinness a nice creamy head on top of the pint. We use about 100,000 tonnes of barley in the brewing of Guinness every year. It's all Irish-grown barley. The majority we malt, and in the remaining barley that we roast is a very small percentage, but it's very significant because it's the roasted barley that gives Guinness its very dark ruby red colour.
After the tour, you can head to the rooftop bar for the best view in Dublin and a complimentary pint of your own.
As you can see, it's settled because it's completely dark. So what we're going to do, start in the middle, and go around once, and then go around twice, and then go back around again. And there we have a shamrock and the perfect pint of Guinness.
For a more systematic stroll through Ireland's history, be sure to visit the National Mask of rebel leader Michael Collins. While Dublin is crowded and busy, rustic, rural Ireland is just a short drive away. We're off to visit some great historic sites outside the city, Glendalough to the south, and Mhide Castle on the hill of Tera to the north. Set amidst wild beauty, Glendalough is one of Ireland's unforgettable experiences. The name means glen between two lakes. And it was here that in the 6th century, St. Kevin founded one of the country's early monasteries. According to tradition, Kevin had journeyed into the wilderness to escape the advances of a female admirer.
He had a vision telling him to start a monastery, and he picked this spot for its obvious inspirational qualities. Over the centuries, the monastery blossomed into an important center of learning, and students traveled from the far corners of Europe to study here.
There are lots of legends associated with St. Kevin, and his special relationship with animals was well known. According to one story, an otter that he had befriended supplied the monks with salmon during a period of drought. But when one of the monks contemplated making gloves out of the animal's pelt, the otter left and never returned. The golden age of Irish monasteries lasted about 600 years before falling at the hands of plundering Anglo-Norman invaders. Ireland is a cornucopia of castles, small, large, ruined, pristine. Mhide Castle, just 8 miles north of Dublin, is one of the finest. It dates to the 12th century and, amazingly, was occupied by the same family right up until 1973, except that is for a brief period when they were evicted by Oliver Cromwell's army. The Talbot family was a plucky lot. It's said that in 1690, 14 Talbot cousins breakfasted here at the castle before riding out to the Battle of the Boyne, a showdown between the Catholics and the Protestants. None of the Talbot cousins returned. But Puck, the family ghost, refuses to relinquish the Talbot hold on the castle and continues to haunt its halls. The rolling, fertile Boyne River Valley encompasses an array of enigmatic ruins. Pastoral and quietly compelling, the Hill of Tera has claimed a special place in Irish folklore for thousands of years. This was the center of Irish power from prehistoric times to about the 10th century. In ancient times, the Druid priests gained mystical powers here. Traditionally, control of Tera entitled a Celtic warlord to the title High King. It's said that St. Patrick himself came here to confront paganism at its most powerful site. After Christianity took hold in Ireland, Tera's influence faded. But the hill still retained symbolic importance. In 1843, Daniel O'Connell held a demonstration for home rule here and rallied 1 million people. One of Northern Ireland's top attractions is the Folk Park just outside the town of Omagh. The Ulster American Folk Park is an intriguing look at Ireland's past. If you had ancestors who immigrated from Ireland, it's especially interesting to see how typical Irish men and women lived just a century ago.
If we go back into ancient history, the smith is looked on as a mysterious person because he takes metal that people don't understand anyway and does weird and wonderful things with it.
The economy of the North relied heavily on the work of weavers and spinners. This was a true cottage industry.
Women who spun were called spinsters.
The women worked at spinning wheels in their homes and spun continuous strands of yarn from lamb's wool. Then the local weaver used a loom to transform the yarn into cloth. And every cottage needed heat, from a real peat fire, of course.
Peat has been the fuel in Ireland for thousands of years. For thousands of years.
Peat is compressed and partially decomposed organic matter that can be burned. The farmers cut small blocks of it from the ground and then carefully stack them in piles to dry. It seems nostalgic today, but life in Old World Ireland was often unbearably harsh. Poverty and the hope for a better life convinced millions to seek their fortunes in the New World. During bad times, especially the devastating potato famine of the 19th century, many Irish headed for North America. They were lured by ads for sailing ships, ads that glamorized what would be a grueling, miserable journey lasting up to 12 weeks.
I don't know if you've heard the story of the living wakes. These were sort of a going away gathering. The wake was because it was a very sad occasion. Their family weren't ever likely to see these people again. All the neighbours came to say goodbye.
This was quite a traumatic experience for the Irish people. Their first time to the seaside. Their first time to see hundreds of people maybe milling around the seaport. They were coming from a very humble background. Their total environment would have been within a few miles of their own small cottage. And to come into the big city and go to the dockside in itself was a traumatic experience.
Hundreds of steerage passengers and their belongings were squeezed into the small bunks. Disease was rampant, and scurvy and typhus everywhere. But the immigrants risked it all for a chance at a new life. Their adventure was just beginning, but ours has come to an end. And what better than an Irish toast to send us on our way? May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. The sunshine warm upon your face. The rain fall soft upon your fields.
Oh, okay, one more toast. May you be in heaven a half hour before the devil knows you're dead. What a way with words. I'm Rudy Maxa. Until we meet again.